You keep it quiet, we say it loud. The things you hide, we're calling out. Double lies and blurred lines, love that cuts, truth that bites. Sex, secrets, and a little sass. Nothing stays buried when you drop the mask. We're the Gen Sexers, no shame, no filter. Just the truth, but hotter.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sex, Secrets, and Sass. I'm Angie.
And I'm Chrissy, and we are the Gen Sexers. So today we have a guest, Nicole Sonnefeldt. She is an alternative relationship and lifestyle coach and educator who helps anyone navigating non-monogamy do so with intention to create authentic and equitable relationships for all those involved. And I love that. I love that, Nicole. So welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I guess I just want to start with what got you into this work?
Okay, so it's been a journey, but prior to having my business, I was a therapist. So I've been non-monogamous for years, and it was something I was exploring throughout the time I was in grad school. And then I ended up working in private practice, and my specialization ended up being individuals and couples with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was really, really fulfilling work, but also exhausting, as you can imagine. And when I met my hours to get my full licensure, I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I thought about how much I really wanted to work with my community, because I was doing couples therapy with married couples that were monogamous and had been together forever. And although I enjoyed the systems perspective of working with couples, when it came to what we were actually talking about, there was so much of it I didn't agree with. And I kind of felt like I was living a double life, like being non-monogamous and being on the lifestyle on the weekends. And then I'm going to work and I have couples arguing about whether or not porn is cheating. And it was just like a total kind of mind fuck.
Like a disconnect.
One thing. Yeah, I was like, this is just so weird for me. But as you guys both know, the ethical boundaries when you're a counselor are really strict. And it's for a really important good reason. But because I'm in so many different communities under the non-monogamous umbrella in the Chicago area, I realized if I want to serve this population, I would probably have to take a step back from some of the things that I was doing and the ways that I'm participating, because there's so much overlap. And I had a few close calls with the very few polyamorous clients I did have, even though I was working in the suburbs and living in the city. So coaching was kind of that loophole that I found where I could still be as active in my community as I wanted, but I could use my skills to help my community. And it's also just given me a lot more flexibility in the type of work I can do. I can see people from all over, but really it came down to not really wanting to feel like I lived a double life anymore. Not being able to be authentic in all parts of my life and feeling like I had to hide parts of myself at work just became more and more draining. So yeah, really wanted to use my skills to help my community, because they've been such a big part of my own growth and healing. So yeah.
Yeah. Speaking from experience in living a double life, I know how exhausting that is.
It really is. Yeah. Because even the things like going to work and people are like, oh, how was your weekend? What did you do? Right? If I'm going to play parties on the weekends, it's not really something that's deemed appropriate in the workplace, even in a therapeutic setting, right? That's not something you're supposed to talk to openly about with your coworkers. So even down to that, even though people knew me as the poly therapist who they could consult with about it, actually sharing what my personal life was felt very inappropriate for that setting. So I felt like I just had to hide and mask a lot of things when I was at work.
I was just curious, how easy or difficult was that decision to go from being a licensed therapist to a relationship coach?
It was, I don't know, it was a little bit of both. So the hardest part about it was leaving my clients, because ethically you cannot go from being someone's therapist to coach, but also the type of help that my clients needed, none of them would be good fit clients for what I do now. And I think that was the hardest part, was knowing I was such a fixture in these people's lives, some of them for years, every single week. For some of them, I was the closest relationship or most trusting relationship they ever had. And as you guys know, you do have real connections with your clients. I'm very much a relational therapist, so those were real relationships. So the hardest part for me was making that decision and knowing how it would potentially impact my clients. And luckily I was able to give them a lot of notice. Like I think most of them knew 6 or 8 weeks before. So we were able to have like a nice drawn out time of ending our time together and a smooth transition to new therapists if they continued. But oh my gosh, on my last day, I like cried. I was like sobbing with several of my clients. It was so, I came into work and I was so like, I couldn't hold it together and I didn't want to make it about myself. And my coworker reminded me, hey, being a blank slate therapist is actually kind of traumatizing. So like you're not taking away from it if you're showing them that you care as much as they do. And so yeah, really leaving my clients was the hardest part about it. But now that was actually my last day was New Year's Eve of 2025. So now that I'm like a little over 6 months into this transition, most of the things that have been most difficult have been like the business side of things, learning curve. Because as a therapist, like you're not writing copy to market yourself, right? It's very, very different. And so moving into like this business mindset, learning all of those skills. But then as far as the work I'm doing, it's much more fun, much more authentic to me. And in that way, like a lot lighter and a lot more energizing. Not that working with my clients wasn't fulfilling, but it was really heavy work. So on the flip side, even though it was a hard transition, it's been really nice and really fun.
Yeah, that's one thing they don't teach us in grad school is marketing and having a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we all come into this of, well, we can talk about how we feel about it, but teach me how to do Excel because I don't know how to do that part. So yeah.
That part's really hard.
Wow. So how long have you been in, not like you said you were non-monogamous all through grad school? When did you decide that monogamy was not for you?
So it's kind of been a lifelong journey. When I was younger, like in high school and college, I was sort of a serial monogamist. So one relationship to the next, but also sometimes I would cheat, but it wasn't necessarily out of just sex. I found myself having feelings for multiple people at the same time, but I always thought there was something wrong with me. So I was trying to just fit into this mold of what relationships are supposed to be. And then I read this book, Sex at Dawn. Have you guys ever heard of this?
I've heard of it, but never read it.
Yeah, same.
So it is so fascinating. It's an anthropology book. And it talks about how, like, historically, a lot of the studies they've done on primates that humans are closely related to have been very much through, like, a patriarchal lens, and how they've completely ignored all these studies on bonobos who are actually non-monogamous primates. And they're also matriarchal, and humans are actually more closely related to them than the other apes that they've been using as their, like, explanation for human behavior. And so the whole book, and it talks about a bunch of indigenous tribes and other like historical precursors to monogamy. And so basically it lays out this case to say that monogamy isn't inherently natural to humans. And reading it was so validating to me because I'm like, holy shit, there's not something wrong with me. I actually might be experiencing things in a way that's more normal than I think. But then after that, it took a really long time to actually be non-monogamous in practice. And it was actually when I met a former partner of mine, and maybe like our second date, we talked about how we didn't believe in monogamy. And so we decided first we're gonna like get to know each other and kind of get like a strong base of our relationship. And then I was on this Facebook group called Sex Positive Universe for Women, and someone brought up the app Field. And so I was like, all right, let's download it. And we kind of went from there, and we just explored and had like a lot of different relationship structures throughout our time together, like always with each new experience, kind of like moving things around. And that was actually in the summer of 2020 that I met him. And so it's been since then that I've officially been exploring it.
I love how organic it was for the two of you to figure it out as you went along. And that was you. It sounds like that was your agreement to grow into this, grow your relationship together, and also what it looked like.
Yeah.
Because I wonder if people who maybe they're in a monogamous relationship and they wonder, well, should we open it up? And all these rules that they feel they need to follow. And I know therapists even say, okay, well, what are your rules going to be? But I just love the organic nature of how yours came about. I am going to have to read that book because that idea, I was listening to a biologist. He is the director of the Kinsey Institute, where they have anthropologists, biologists, sexologists, and he talks about that same thing, that social monogamy, which is companionship, and there's sexual monogamy, which is having sex with the same person. And women in tribal, women used to have sex with a bunch of different men to ensure that their offspring had a father.
Yeah. So it's more natural than people realize. It's actually, they talk about it in the book, but with the agricultural revolution is sort of where monogamy started and transformed from there. So it's not even that, it hasn't been around as long as people think.
Yeah.
I am curious about the term ethical non-monogamy. I have had clients that are polyamorous or are considering non-monogamy. And I think some people throw that word around without understanding what ethical non-monogamy is. So could you explain it to our listeners?
Yes, I love that you bring this up. So I often say there's a lot of people that are doing it, but they forget about the E. So it's, to be ethical, it has to be fully consensual. So unlike unethical non-monogamy, which would be cheating, everyone that's involved is on board. So everyone that you're with knows that you have other partners, whether it be romantic or sexually, and everyone is at their own free will agreeing to that. And so that's what makes it ethical, although the term ethical in itself, that's like very subjective. What is ethical? So I tend to just say non-monogamy. In my like tagline of my business, it's more like I say conscious non-monogamy, because I'm like, in order to be ethical or consensual, you have to be conscious, you have to be intentional, you have to be present, and really aware of what you're doing. But unfortunately, it's kind of starting to be thrown around in a way where people think it means that they don't have responsibility to any of their partners, or they can just sleep with whoever they want, and unfortunately don't realize the huge responsibility that it is to actually have multiple partners, even if it's just sex. People don't think about how serious that actually is.
When a couple comes to us as therapists, it's usually, their last ditch effort, or maybe they really are working on their relationship and have excuse me, something that they need to work on. When they come to you, what seems to be their presenting issue? What are they coming to you initially for? And does that ever, you find, is something else?
So it's very different than being a couples therapist in that, as you know, like a lot of times couples will come to therapy when things are too far gone. So it's different when they come to me because they're seeking me out to help them work towards a goal. In particular, couples that are looking to open up their relationship or are very new and they just want guidance on how to do it in a way that's healthy and like protect their relationship. So it's much more proactive as opposed to reactive. But what I've found, especially for couples, the longer they're together, is that it ends up being a lot of work trying to unmesh them. Like, we tend to just naturally become codependent the longer that we're with people, and especially because a lot of toxic monogamy culture tends to normalize codependency. So then when we're bringing in other people, whether it be sexual or romantic, that can be really, really difficult for people to be able to tolerate, even though that's logically what they want. But because they're so enmeshed, and then they create these rules to try to control their partner, or they have a hard time with their partner experiencing discomfort or jealousy, even though they're natural emotions. So it ends up being a lot of work around how do you two go from being fully like codependent to interdependent.
Ooh, so you normalize jealousy is going to happen.
Yeah. I think that's like, it depends, of course, on who you're talking to, but in a lot of non-monogamous communities, people try to just like shove it under the rug, or they think jealousy says something bad about you. But of course, as a trauma therapist, I'm like, jealousy is a core attachment fear. Jealousy is the fear of losing someone or something that you love. So it's natural, it's going to come up even if you are totally secure in yourself, totally secure in your relationship. We're programmed to see someone else being romantic or sexual with our partner as a threat, whether it be like because of past trauma or how we're raised religiously, what society says about relationships and jealousy. Like, there's so many beliefs that go into it. So I'm on a mission to normalize jealousy and actually say, like, all emotions have a purpose, all emotions are good, and your jealousy is just information.
Yeah. So let's say someone in a relationship, in a traditional monogamous relationship, whether they're identify as heterosexual, homosexual, bi, right? But a person is considering non-monogamy. How best can that person bring it up with their partner? Like, what are some suggestions you have for people that are maybe considering it in their mind and they want to get it out verbally? How might they bring that up?
It's a great question. I think first, most importantly, is for you to have an understanding of why it is you want to be non-monogamous. Because I remember when I was working in a therapy practice, actually, like, having clients bring it up to me that they were thinking about it, but I knew they were having a lot of issues in their relationship. And I would say, is this because you just don't want to sleep with your partner because you're not happy, so you think sleeping with someone else will make it better? Because that's not how it works. Like, if you already have a lot of instability or a lot of wounds in your relationship, you actually need to make sure that's secure prior to exploring non-monogamy, because it's just going to bring those issues to the surface faster. So I think first and foremost, really understanding why it is that you want to explore it so that you can come to your partner with that information. I think also framing it in a way that it's about yourself and your own exploration or beliefs or growth that you've come to and realized you want to explore this, but not about something's wrong with your partner or something's wrong with the relationship. Because again, like, if you're doing it because there is something in your relationship or with your partner you're not happy about, that's something you should work on first before you open up your relationship.
I would imagine it would make that relationship that much more unstable if you're bringing in a third party or a fourth party, or right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could see too, if you're bringing it up because you want to have sex outside of your marriage, that other person is not going to be, if you've already been arguing about things and then one part of the couple says, what do you think about opening up our our relationship? The other person can be like, no, how is that going to help? So I can see if it comes. Do you ever have anybody come as an individual because they want to and their partner doesn't? And how should someone navigate that? Is it just, okay, don't do it, it's lock it up inside, you're with that person, you made, if you're married, you took vows, or what do people
so I haven't necessarily had anyone come to me as an individual where their partner didn't want to explore it, but generally speaking, if that's the case, I think that's a decision point. I know this is very much an oversimplification, but if what you want long term out of your relationship isn't compatible with your partner, like, not every relationship is meant to last forever. And if exploring non-monogamy is that important to you, that you feel like this is something that you need to do for yourself, then it's kind of a decision point. Like, if my partner doesn't want to do this with me, do I stay in this relationship, or is doing this exploration more important to me? But I definitely think to disregard your partner saying they're totally not open to it and then just do it unethically behind their back is a big problem.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much, going outside of your marriage for a relationship that they don't know about. It's just going to be a hell of a lot of hurt.
Exactly. Yeah.
In your experience, when you're out and about, either professionally or personally in the community, how often are you finding that people are saying they want to be non-monogamous because it's about the sex and they want more partners?
think it depends. A lot of people, it is about the sex, at least when they start. I know when I started, we were mostly looking to have more like diverse sexual experiences. But as time went on, I realized like I need some sort of connection with someone to enjoy the sex. Not everyone's that way. Some people are just very run of the mill swingers. Like they'll go as a couple to a party and swap with other couples and play with other people, but just keep it at that. But I think the longer that you do it, you start to build relationships with people. It's a community, you get closer with them. And so I think a lot of people that start out thinking it's purely going to be about sex end up over time changing their relationship structure. Although there are things, of course, you can do if you really don't want to open yourself up to other romantic connections to try to like offset the likelihood of that happening. You really can't control how you feel. So some people, it really catches them off guard.
I bet.
When I think back to my 20s, when I was a like serial datist, is that a word? I don't know. I just serially dated. And I would date multiple people at the same time. And for me, it wasn't about sex with different people, although sometimes that is what happened. It was more about being wanted. I loved the flirtation. I was addicted to like the flirtatiousness of it.
Yeah.
And being wanted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it feels good to be wanted, and it's fun to be wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can we differentiate? And I don't know if it's just because I am about destigmatizing, you know, sex, destigmatizing BDSM and kink. And so I'm very aware of things, but, you know, to our listeners, and Nicole, I grew up Mormon, so sex was so taboo.
Oh, wow. I love that you're doing this.
How can we help our listeners know that this is natural and it's fun and it doesn't have to be taboo and not talked about? That it, you know, if they might have a fetish or, you know, ooh, that kind of sounds fun. Like how do we bring it into the normal language?
I mean, I think doing what we're doing now, like starting the conversations about it, you know, yeah, because that's really what it is. If you don't talk about something, it creates shame around it. And so
absolutely,
then that just adds to stigma versus being very open about it. One of the disagreements that I had with my ex-partner, we're no longer together, but it was great to begin exploring all of this, was that I was always very open about our relationship and my sexuality. And I've been that way my entire life. Even though I was raised Catholic, my mom was always very open about sex. So I had that like mixed messaging and that positive influence. So I was always very open about it. But he would get very frustrated. Like, why do you feel like you need to? I was working at a bar. Like, why do you have to tell your regulars that we go to play parties? You know, why do you have to be so open about it? And I'm like, I'm not going to hide who I am. Like, that makes it feel like it's shameful. Like, if I hide it or I don't talk about it or I'm really weird when I talk about it, that just creates even more stigma. Like, oh, there's a reason why she wants to hide it, versus if you talk about it openly, you normalize it. And then the more that people talk about it, you start to realize how many people are actually practicing non-monogamy in some way, or how many people are actually into kink, you know? So I think just having these conversations and opening up dialogue is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah. I learned so much even just from a friend of mine who has really gotten into and enjoying the kink world. And, you know, since her divorce, her mind has just, you know, things she thought she would never ever do, and she's like, I love it, dude. And just seeing somebody who just kind of blossom into her own sexuality. And I'm all about like, girl, show it off, do what, you know, wear what you want, be safe, be consenting, but let's all be sexy and sassy together.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's why if you get a group of women together and you just start dancing, and I have very raucous friends. I mean, we are cruder than crude. But that's kind of the crowd I like to hang out with.
I'm the same way. at this point, I always say, like, I don't know how to talk to vanilla people. Like, I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I literally,
Right.
like, I cannot mask myself. Like, it's so hard for me to not just speak freely because I do have some friends that aren't part of the community that I've had for a long time that are supportive. Like, my friends from college, they're like, this makes so much sense for you. We're so happy for you. But all my friends in the Chicago area, for the most part, are non-monogamous in some shape or form. And so we are all so open and like so open with all of my girlfriends, and things that other people would find so taboo to talk about is our normal everyday conversation. And it just feels so nice to be able to like know I don't have to censor myself when I'm talking to people.
Absolutely. What do you find to be the most stigmatizing? What has the most stigma in your community from other people?
That's a great question, because I think it depends who you're talking to. I think in general, when it comes to the lifestyle, which is like what most people know is swinging, a lot of people who are not a part of it assume that everyone's just sleeping with everyone the moment they meet them. They assume that people are dirty, right? They like assume it's this free for all, and they have no idea that actually everyone is super chill. Everybody, for the most part, is really educated about consent. Everyone tests really regularly and is really good about being as safe as possible. And so that's one of the stereotypes that's just completely wrong. Like, I've found over time that people who are practicing ethical non-monogamy in particular are much better when it comes to sexual health as opposed to people who are monogamous. And so that's a huge stigma about that community. I think when it comes to kink, which I'm also into, there's a lot of people who say, like, if you're into that, you must be traumatized. And that's just not true. I recently wrote a Substack article about like when I had my late ADHD diagnosis. It made sense to me why I was into really intense impact play, because of the sensation part of it, and it like keeps me present and engaged. And so instead of having this weird sort of view that a lot of society has, like, oh, I must be traumatized or there's something wrong with me because I want someone to beat me, it's like, oh, actually it's this sensory thing, and like if it's not happening, I might not be present, and like I'm a, what do you call it, like a high sensory seeking, I'm a sensory seeking individual. Like, so that made so much more sense, you know what I mean? And then there's a view of poly people like that we're all ugly and have low self-esteem, which I also is like just not true. So I mean, every aspect of it, there's weird stigma and stereotypes. So I guess it depends who you ask, but I think all of it's very stigmatized to different degrees depending on who you talk to.
Wow, that's so interesting. All poly are ugly. I never would have. Interesting. Yeah. I love the idea that, I mean, it makes sense that there's more consent, there's more sexual health because you are conscious of not just yourself, but of who you're playing with and interacting with. And it seems like there's more caring in that aside. And because it's all out in the open, I'm sure discussions about that kind of thing are easily had as well versus in the just regular dating world. Mm-hmm. I know when I was divorced and dating, I never asked anybody when the last time they were tested. Consent was definitely part of it, but I felt I was timid to ask.
Yeah, well, we're taught that it's like dirty, right? And so that's one of the things that what I teach my clients, like there's certain communication skills that you need to be in this that we don't learn. So we build those skills, and one of them is the comfort around talking about sexual health and safety. But yeah, like a lot of people, the longer they're in it, these are their friends. Like I have people who are in the lifestyle that aren't people I date, but people I play with that are really good friends of mine. And we all care about each other. So we're all going to make sure we're being as safe as possible. And when someone has gotten an STI, they just tell everyone they've played with immediately, but no one like shames them, because you don't purposely get an STI. No one does that on purpose. And ironically, the last time it happened, and most of the time it happens, it's when someone goes outside the group and sleeps with a monogamous person and they end up getting chlamydia. So it's very ironic in that way. Because they haven't been tested. Yeah, they like haven't been tested in their entire life, you know?
Right.
So it's just so stigmatized as well.
Yeah. It's so interesting. If someone is sick with, I don't know, bronchitis or the common cold, we have no problem asking them, are you contagious, right? Are you still contagious? But we don't ask questions about sexual health. It's so interesting. Or even during COVID, right? We would ask people, did you get tested?
Are you vaccinated?
How many days? Are you vaccinated?
Are you vaccinated?
But we don't ask. Yeah.
But
So
we won't.
Yeah.
It's still such a, you know, we've inherited this Victorian, we don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a lady if you're going to talk about sex.
Yeah.
Now, I want to just kind of switch gears a little bit here because I know, and we can delete this, Nicole, if you don't want me to talk about it, but
okay.
I know that we share a history in the sex industry. So I was, as you know, a sensual massage therapist, and you were a cam girl. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. No, I'm happy to talk about this.
Yeah. Wonderful. So tell me how you decided to get into it.
Yes.
And then how many people knew, if any, at the time, and when did you come out? All those good questions.
Thank you for asking this. I love this. So it's funny. I was always interested in the sex industry in some way. My undergrad was in dance. I'm a professionally trained dancer, and I looked into working in a club, but I was very scared about what types of situations I would be put into. Like every time that it came down to exploring any sort of in-person sex work, I got really nervous about if I could be put in a situation that was potentially dangerous or coercive. So I never did it. And then I spent the majority of my early 20s working in the service industry. And so when everything shut down with COVID, I was like, well, you know what? I've always wanted to explore being a cam girl. So I'm just going to do it because now I have all this time in the world, because you really have to put in a lot of hours to get a following. And so I knew when I was working a job, I couldn't afford to not work and put time aside to make no money building up my clientele on the campsite. But COVID was a great time to be doing that. So I ended up doing it throughout COVID. And then I went to grad school I started in January of 2021. So I was doing it throughout grad school because it was really, really flexible. And at that point I had built up my regulars and my following. It was interesting. It was very serendipitous. So the partner that I started exploring non-monogamy with, we like met like basically outside a bar when I was walking my old roommate's dog in the summer of 2020. Like, so when everyone was like allowed to be outside. And it turned out also that he was working on a campsite, because I remember I was afraid to tell him when we were first talking. And then he's like, what site? A Chatterbait? I'm like, yeah, actually. So that was really cool. Few of my closest friends knew, but not many people knew because, again, there's so much stigma. And I got very mixed reactions from the friends I had at the time. And then throughout grad school, like this would be a topic that would come up. And I remember in particular, I was taking in our basic interviewing skills class, we had case vignettes where we had to give a like provisional diagnosis. And one of the groups in their vignette, there was a woman that had done full service sex work. And one of my classmates had said, oh, they have BPD because they're engaging in risky behavior. And no one like said anything. And I spoke up and I was like, what about this vignette says she's engaging in risky behavior? And she's like, oh, well, she's a sex worker. And I'm like, well, there's no details about whether or not they're being risky like this, you know. And I would see, and even like, so I now, all right, I'm gonna try to stay on track. I'm like, squirrel. So basically then, because I'm like, which way do I go with the story? So then I was taking a human sexuality class, and we did these reflection papers each week that just our professors read. And I wrote about being a cam girl, and I eventually, they responded so positively, and they said, hey, when you graduate, would you want to come lecture in our class? Because they have alumni that are therapists. All like, there's someone that was a pro dom, someone that's really into pup play that came and lectured in their pup mask. Like,
amazing.
Everything you could think of, they'll have them come lecture for the class. And so they had such a positive reception of me. So I ended up actually talking about it in that class when we were talking about sex work. which was extremely nerve-wracking. But then once I started going back every semester to lecture, it just became, every time I got more and more comfortable and more proud of that part of my life. And so it's just become really important to me to be really open about it and advocate for people. But what I was going to say earlier was another thing that triggered me to feel like I really needed to talk about this was a lot of people will make jokes like, oh, I'm just going to start an OnlyFans, or I'm just going to sell feet pics. And as someone who also tried to do OnlyFans, it's actually so much work. It's so time consuming. You have to have so many different skills. You're really an entrepreneur. And so when people make jokes like that, it minimizes the work, like it's not real work and like anybody can do it. And, and so I think it's really important to like speak out about it and say like, no, this takes legitimate skills,
Right. And it's called sex work because it is work.
Yes, exactly. It's a lot of work. And my work as a cam girl is very similar to therapy in a lot of ways. A lot of it is people are seeking connection,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I was seeing clients in my sensual massage business, I did have connections with so many of them, right? We'd have conversations about their relationships, about their life, about their work, about their friendships.
Yeah. I found a lot of the people that I communicated with most when I was doing that would ask relationship advice. And a lot of it was asking, I want to try this thing. How do I bring it up to my girlfriend? And so I've found as I've become friends, because of course there are a lot of sex workers that are non-monogamous, because inherently what you're doing in your job for most people would not be allowed in a monogamous relationship, even though it's work technically. But so I've met a ton of sex workers since I've been more entrenched in the non-monogamous community. And I've found that we all talk about how the things we make most money on are usually not even sexual.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I was really curious about that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think our listeners should know about ethical non-monogamy? A new thing I've heard is consensual non-consent. All these terms that maybe get thrown around. Like you said, I'll just open up an OnlyFans. It's, well, do you know how much work actually goes into that?
Yeah.
What are some other things that, because I think as people become educated, then they'll stop talking about it like that and really think. And my hope is that anyway.
Well, I think for any of these things, for one, it's really important to ask people what they mean when they're using terms, because a lot of people can say I'm E&M or I'm poly, or right, like I want to do CNC and these are my safe words. The conversation should not end there. It should be, well, what does that mean to you? What do these terms mean to you? What does that look like for you? Because otherwise we're totally operating off of assumptions, and there's so many different ways that these relationships can look that we just can't operate off of assumptions. And we do that in monogamy and it causes problems. I found that working with monogamous couples, they operate off assumptions so much and it causes most of their issues. So really being able to have clear, explicit, and direct communication is so important. But I think also just as important is making sure you're still in touch with yourself. I think a lot of people get really excited by the idea of having sex with lots of people or being able to love lots of people to where they overextend themselves. And then in that scenario, you can lose yourself or you can self-abandon and you ended up not being a good partner to other people because you're not even in touch with yourself and what you want and need anymore. So I think it's also just important to make sure you have a healthy relationship with yourself and prioritizing time to yourself, so you can be realistic about like what type of capacity you actually have to explore these things.
And I know you mentioned the book Sex at Dawn. Are there other resources that are kind of your go-to resources for someone maybe exploring?
So yeah, some beginner ones. So Polysecure is my favorite of everything I've read so far, although I'm reading some new things right now. But I really like Polysecure, even if you're not polyamorous. It goes into, it's trauma informed and it goes into attachment theory. And she also has this nested model of attachment that talks about your attachment to yourself, to your family, to society at large, to the world. That's really interesting. And so there were things in that book that I used with monogamous clients all the time. So even if you are just interested in swinging or being monogamish, I think that's an amazing resource. There are some other what?
Monogamish.
Yeah, monogamish. Yeah. It's like, of course, everyone defines it differently, but it's usually like couples that will have like, okay, you have a hall pass because you're going to be on a work trip for 3 weeks, stuff like that. So I think that's great. Ethical slut's a really popular one, but it's helpful, but I think it really oversimplifies them. A lot of the resources really oversimplify it, which I mean, you have to when you're writing a book. And then there's this, if you're just getting into kink, there's a book called Playing Well with Others that I really, really like. It's helpful.
Great. We'll link all of these in our show notes for today's. Yes. And we want to link anything that has to do with you. So where can people find you if they want to learn more about your services?
So you can go to my website, freeformcoaching.com, but I'm also on Substack, TikTok, and Instagram at Freeform Coaching. And like I said, the Substack is a really great place. I have so if you subscribe, you'll get a lot of educational content about non-monogamy, but I write about anything like sex positive, pleasure positive, LGBTQ, kink, ENS, sex work, you name it. And then free subscribers will get more. I'll do kind of like personal articles about my own experiences and things like that. So it's a great place if you want some educational content.
Great.
Wonderful.
And for those listeners who are just listening and not watching on YouTube, what does your shirt say?
It says, not trying to slut shame you, but some of you could be sluttier.
I love it.
I thought it was appropriate. I'm like, what do I want to wear for this?
100%.
Love that. Some of you could be sluttier.
And I wanted our listeners to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
If they're not able to read it, that's fantastic.
Oh my God. Oh, that's great. Love it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast, Nicole. It was such a pleasure getting to know you and
thank you
having this
I
conversation.
do have a question. Sorry,
Okay.
to cut you off.
Yeah.
Do you have like a newsletter or anything like that? Like, to keep up with, I know you just had an event recently in Chicago, and like, I would love to know when those events are coming up again in the future, because I know I couldn't go to that one, but is there a way to keep up with you? Maybe just follow you?
Yeah. So if you go on my website, you can subscribe to emails, and I don't do a ton of like annoying marketing stuff. I literally just email when I have events for the most part, or like new offerings. But yeah, I'll also post about it on social media and on my Substack. But yeah, my email list, you can sign up on my website or through the link tree on my Instagram, and you'll get those notifications.
Fabulous. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And for those watching on YouTube, be sure to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell, whatever you call that thing. And and if you're listening, be sure to like and subscribe and comment and all that stuff. And happy orgasming.
Happy orgasming.
Ooh, happy orgasming.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.